Sahana bhavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, saha viryam karavavahai, tejasvinavaditam astu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily argue with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So, welcome. The subject tonight is
spiritual meetings of East and West.
Spiritual meetings of East and West. There was an old saying, East is East and West is West, and never the twain shall meet. You can't say it in this day and age, because cultures are now so mixed and travel is so convenient. And if you ask somebody in Japan, where is East, they can legitimately say it's America, because we know that there's a globe. And so, but we still have some kind of lingering cultural affiliation to East and West, in the sense that Western civilization and culture is built on Judeo-Christian values. And Eastern side of things is based on such religions as Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, and Confucianism, Shintoism, and so on. And collectively that comprises about 50% of the world's population. And then, of course, these cultural influences that are derived at root will have their influence down the ages. Swami Vivekananda conveniently divided these roots into two sections. One is derived from ancient Greece, and the other one is derived from ancient India. And the purpose of doing that is to see, or to ask the question, is there any repercussion, cultural repercussion, social repercussion that comes from these roots? So let us see, what were the Greeks interested in? Well, the Greeks were interested in the human form. They were interested in deities that were really giants and had to be propitiated whenever there was a trouble. But that's not the point. The point is that each person, whether East and West, seems to require religion. In the East, the emphasis is more on yogis and mystics of this nature, yogis and rishis, seers, and the Western culture more to do with, that is, the Judeo-Christian culture, more to do with prophets and saints. But then the question is there really any difference between these two things? We have these things because even if you're agnostic or atheist or whatever your declaration is, you will still decide that something is moral or immoral. And what do you base your morality on? You'll base it on certain biblical values that were there that you no longer believe in, and yet it's so ingrained. In the same way, in the East, you'll find the fundamental understanding that there is an internal substratum which acts as a life giver. The term jiva means a living thing, something that is imbued with life. And something that is imbued with life is something that moves. So how do we know you're alive? Well, presumably you move. If we poke you and you don't move, either you're asleep or you're dead. And if you're not breathing, well, we know the answer. So we have to clarify some terms of what we mean, both East and West. In the Western understanding of it, the words soul and spirit get confused. And in French, and I think I mentioned this before, the word l'esprit applies to both spirit and mind. That adds to the confusion. And then we have two terms in the Yoga Vedanta philosophy, Jiva and Atman. Jiva means something that is live and something that exhibits response. We know it's alive. We know it reproduces. Even a cell is jiva because it reproduces and it replicates, it breathes, it eats, it selects nourishment, it throws away waste products, and it knows how to work within its environment. Curiously, it has an internal intelligence. That is also jiva. So anything that is living is jiva. In the Bhagavad Gita, we find a very interesting stanza. It says, Mamai vamso jivaroke jiva bhutaha sanatanaha manaha shastani indriyani prakritstani karshati. An eternal portion of myself, says Krishna, speaking for the divine, having become the embodied soul, in the world of living beings, draws to itself the senses with the mind as the sixth, which are nature, prakriti. Now we are largely ignorant of this fact. So ignorance means we have forgotten. We've forgotten that the eternal portion of the divine itself has become the embodied soul in the world, the embodied in the world. Characteristic of all the things that make a jiva, that is a response to the environment, you can only do it through the senses. And the operating queen bee of all the senses, the mind. Wherever the mind goes, all the senses go. And so that's one term. Therefore, when we look at any living creature, we should remind ourselves of this passage. It will change your life. How so? Because it will change your outlook. You'll register not only is this divine being not separate, not different, not in a heavenly realm somewhere or an extra cosmic region, but it's actually become an eternal portion, an infinite being, an eternal expression of it has become the living beings. What about the rest? The rest is beyond our comprehension. So this is what we can call soul. And when we understand that this is this accumulation, this aggregate, where an eternal portion of the divine has become this, become it, and expresses itself through it. Now, in our waking world, we will see that. We'll see all these diverse forms. We'll look carefully at the biology of plants and so on. We'll study all the realms of the cosmos. But mainly, we'll be aware of our own small world of difficulties, so-called, and of physical presence, a kind of body that is a little bit precarious. One snap of the neck and the body is gone. And yet within it, such complexity. And this complexity comes because an eternal portion of myself, says Krishna, has entered into or embodied myself in the world of living beings and draws to itself the senses. Now, in our waking world, we can only operate and register through the senses. But all those senses, they have their setting. So what is different is the question that Nachiketa asks in the Kathopanishad. What is the difference between good and evil? And what happens, in the setting, the senses and so on. It means when the eyes go down, the inner eyes are still alive. And it's the inner eyes, the inner ears and so on, that replicate things. And when we have this memory plus dream, we call it, or plus memory plus sleep, we call this dream. It's another world. And then, of course, all that sets again, and we're left with a kind of blank, a peacefulness. Now, if we're understanding things correctly, we can rephrase all of that. Instead of saying a deep sleep, we can say resting in the divine presence. We want to put a little poetry there, then resting on the Divine Mother's lap. We won't call it sleep. We'll say really resting into our divine nature in such a way that we can come out of it again in the working, waking world. And this play happens in the entire cosmos. Don't forget, all beings. An eternal portion of myself, having become the embodied soul in the world of living beings, draws it to itself the senses, along with the mind and the six, which are in nature. In other words, this also applies to the whole of what we call nature. And then we can revise everything as simply part and parcel of this eternal cosmic body that religion calls God. Now, is this the way that the Western culture looks at it? Well, yes and no. My own personal transformation may have occurred when I was brought up and I was told, you see, you are a body with a soul, something like a white sheet inside. And when you misbehave, then something like ink spots go on it. And you do something really, really tragically bad, then the whole thing becomes black. But never mind, you can go for some forgiveness somewhere. Whereas you see, is that the finality of Western thought? And the answer is no. Why no? Because beyond that, you'll find there is a realization of an eternal self that is described in different ways. In Greek Orthodoxy, it's called mystic union. Mystic union, and all the saints will describe it in their own way, according to their own culture and their own experience. And it all happens from inside. Nothing is happening from outside. In our ignorance, we could interpret it as something from outside coming to us. But it is all an internal shift, an internal revelation that comes from inside. And revelation means exactly that. Bit by bit, section by section, the truth is being revealed to us. And what are those layers? Those layers are associated coverings that belong to some other entity. And so we have to make a distinction. What is that distinction? The word Atman. Atman is not soul. Atman is spirit. What is the characteristic of spirit? Nothing. There are no characteristics other than what we can say. Well, it's existent, it's not non-existent. And it is consciousness itself. In other words, if you ask the question, who knows it or who knows anything? And you go back and discover who knows it, you come to a conclusion, I'm the knower. So pure consciousness. Taittiriya Upanishad says, I am the knower. You see, it describes it as Satyam, that is truth, eternal being. Truth is something that never changes. And describe it as Jnantam, that is knowledge, and also Anantam. Anantam, infinity. Other places, Satchit Ananda, existence itself, consciousness itself, and bliss. That's the maximum we can say about it. Can't say anything else. And then, what does it all mean? How will we experience it? Well, these are words that mix up subject and object. Because when you experience something, something is an object. And today, modern science is trying to explore this mystery of consciousness, the hard problem is the key term that is banded around. Consciousness is the hard problem. The saying from David Chalmers, a kind of scientific philosopher. And so everyone has picked this up. But what kind of consciousness is it? Is objective consciousness or awareness? As you're sitting here, you're aware. You're aware of several things. You're aware of me talking, hopefully. But you're also aware maybe of your own surroundings. And if a fly or a bee lands on your ear, you'll be aware of that. There's a self-awareness that occurs of the internal world, of your moods, of your feelings. That's also objective. Not only are you aware of the objective world in front, but you're also aware of the internal, indefinable feelings. You can't put them in a canister. You can't sell them on eBay. You can't determine whether acid or alkaline. There's simply an internal world. And so this is something we know to be true because everyone seems to experience the same thing. And yet it is not materialistic in the sense that you can touch it with your hands, you can lick it with your tongue, none of these things won't respond to it. And yet it's subtle. And we know that something is subtle is more causal. So we can say our world is a product of this internal movements, and we can call this psychic prana, otherwise known as thought. And that produces the world. Therefore we can say, you are what you think. It was Descartes who said, cogito ergo sum. So saying almost the same thing, because I am aware, because I have self-awareness, because I cognize things, therefore I know I am, and that is true. Even though the repercussions of that may be a little difficult, may have produced a duality of mind and matter separate. But we know we can't have anything separate. If you think that you're going to go and do A, B, and C, then you're doing it. The body follows it. So all these layers are on there, and you can compare it also to scenarios. Supposing you're an actor on a stage. You go onto the stage and you play a part. And you have rehearsed this part for many, many weeks, maybe even months. And you go onto the stage and you're aware, if you forget your lines, somebody's there to prompt you. And you don't just go under the lights. Some artist comes and paints your face in such a way that from a distance with the lights, you see all your facial expressions. And you have carefully constructed scenery behind you. And you have a dialogue with people. And you wait for an entrance, and you're interacting with people. And you're not concerned with the quality of the people. You're only concerned with the team quality that produces the overall dramatic effect. Let's say within it, you may have people who are kind, people who are loving, cooperative, socially positive. And then you may have some people who are demonic, evil, jealous, unkind. That all adds to the drama. Now, anybody who takes it seriously, even as an actor, will be completely deluded. There's always an awareness, I am playing a part. This is not me. I've entered into the part. There are some actors that get interviewed and their fellow actors, actresses will say, that person, as soon as they go on the stage, their whole personality gets transformed. There's a famous actor in a television series, and he gave an interview. And the person who was acting with him says, it's remarkable to see the change that this man has as soon as he dresses like his character and walks onto the set. he becomes that character totally. He walks in a different way, he talks in a different way. It looks like he thinks in a different way. And when he comes off, he's back to normal, has some tea and coffee with you, and becomes himself, as it were. But you see, even in playing the part so convincingly, a small part of himself will still register. I am not the part I am playing. I am the person who's playing it. I'm the actor. This is called the waking state. We play our part on our stage of life. The difficulty is we enter into it in such a way that we consider ourselves an individual, and that individuality carries with it the inclination or the hint, if you will, of some divinity hidden somewhere, no doubt, some life energy, no doubt, and yet it's ignored because our identification is completely and totally with the role, otherwise called body. We can say body-mind complex, personality. And so we have a system where we can wake up from this, because it's a kind of play, a kind of dream, if you will, with things that come and go, because the set is not fixed. Unlike a stage, the set is not fixed. The lines are not fixed. There's variation. And without that variation, life doesn't become very exciting. And so we can go out into the world and find a new scene every day, because the one characteristic of this world is it is called Jagat. That means the thing that always changes. And at some point in time, you should surely realize, I'm not this. In the beginning of religion, now religion is the Western term for it. It comes from the Greek, religio. Religio means that there's some set of rules, there are some boundaries there. It's a way of life. Sometimes you ask Hindus, what is Hinduism? They say, oh, it's a way of life. Well, every religion should be a way of life, isn't it? So that's the one derivation, religio, but there's another one, religere. Religere means to read again, because the one characteristic of all religions is, common to all of them, is they have a book. Swami Vivekananda points this out very nicely. And why is that important? Because it's a record. It's evidence of somebody who has seen the truth, somebody who has seen God firsthand, seen the soul firsthand, or the spirit firsthand, and gives us provision. You can also do the same, but I'll provide you with an operational manual. You do X, Y, and Z, please. You follow this pattern of behavior, reform your habit level, and what will that do? It'll peel away these layers like a jiva, of the jiva, which is considered something like an onion, where you peel away an outer layer, and the next one, the next one, the next one. Not literally, but in your awareness. We start with the human body. I'm not this, clearly. All right, then whose is it? Let me register it to the Lord of the universe. Your body, your temple. For that reason, let me do some cleaning on the outside. Let me decorate it also and clean it on the inside through proper diet, yoga exercise, right thinking. And then deep inside, the Lord's throne room. How will I clean this? Through prayer and meditation, japa. Cleaning the body, cleaning the mind, making my occupation a cleaner. What is your occupation? Cleaner. I've sold this many times. Clean the body, clean the mind. With no compulsions involved. And then the dream, what is that? Well, if you use the analogy of a drama, you can also say, instead of playing the part, I can sit in the audience and watch the play before me. But you see, there's only, when I wake up, I know the dream didn't come from outside. It came from inside. I am the dreamer. Now, in the waking state, I can say, I am the perceiver. And we have to use a little science to convince us, because modern science from 1905 already, special relativity, Einstein made a formula that said we have a kind of trick. We can see something several light years away by seeing it several years ago. We can see the sun as if it is now, instead of 8.5 minutes away. Because it takes time for the light to reach us. It's a trick. We see this world constructed as it is. We don't see all the atoms. We don't see the vast space between the atoms. I mentioned previously, you see. If you squeeze all the space out of 8 billion people, they'll all fit into an object the size of a spherical apple. Finished. 8 billion people, like that. Of course, you won't change their mass. It'll be pretty heavy. There are things called neutron stars. Only a few kilometers maybe in width, and yet containing more mass than several suns combined. Imagine. So there are things that we see, there's things that are hidden from us. Why should they be hidden from us? Because nature's way, nature's design is helpful. It says, I won't show you everything, but go through on your adventure and make your discovery, please. Because I'm hiding my true nature. And how is it that I see things as I see them? Is because I'm projecting all these things, like projecting onto a screen. But you're ignoring the screen. And this screen we call Atman or Brahman. The rest we call Jiva. So when we peel one layer off the body, we still have a Jiva with all the accumulated psychological, emotional experiences that we carry through, all our psychological baggage that we carry forward. We don't stop until we realize, oh, I am the Atman, number one. And secondly, all of this phenomena is not separate, because an eternal portion of myself, says Krishna, having become the embodied soul in the world of living beings, draws to itself the senses, the mind as the sixth, which are in nature of Prakriti. We can't say this is not God. It's absolutely that. So there's a recognition of both these things. Having seen the Atman within, I'll now see it everywhere, in every space, in every corner, in every face, in every eye, in every limb. I'll see it like a flowing grace going through, operating limbs like a puppet, including what I used to register as my own. Now supposing we now clear the stage, no actors, scenery is all gone, blank stage, just a light, lighting the stage. Nothing happening. I'm still in the audience. I'm still the witness. This is called a dreamless sleep, a deep sleep. Nothing's happening. All the duality went away. No time, no space. So I am the eternal witness. I am the knower. I am the seer. I am the enjoyer. If there's nothing to witness, I cannot be called a witness. So when I transcend all of that, then I can't be called a witness any longer. I can only be called the pure existence, the pure consciousness, and pure bliss. That's all. It's like if I look at the stars through a telescope, I can look at the telescope also, and also away. I have the freedom to do it. So it is the discovery of this freedom that you have, and you don't leave it there. You enter back into it, but now you enjoy the play with the knowledge, I'm not the role, I'm the actor. I'm not the role. I'm the seer. I'm not something that is seen. I'm the knower. I'm not something that is known. The knower can never be known. Seer can never be seen. Otherwise, we have to look for some other thing. It becomes an object. And so how does this square in the context of what we're discussing? we have to make this clarification. We go away from childish concepts that assist us to lead a good life and say, I'm not the body that possesses a soul. I'm the soul that possesses a body and another body and as many bodies as I like until I realize I'm not the body. And as soon as I realize this one factor, that an eternal portion of myself, having become the embodied soul in the world of living beings, as soon as that realization comes, I'm free, completely free. And therefore, avidya, that means ignorance, is really this misunderstanding or this not recognition of this one stanza. That is called officially ignorance. What is the antidote? Knowledge. What kind of knowledge? Knowledge of your own true nature, where you yourself are the knower. Is that the end of it? No. Where knowledge and knower and the known become the same thing. That happens in meditation. In meditation, there's this unity of experience that says the knower, the known, and the process all merge into one thing. And when I experience that, a flash occurs, or what we might call the infinite invisible, to a Goldsmith's term, the infinite invisible. And when that occurs, and I get used to that, then at any given moment in this waking world, I can withdraw to that space, a poised area, and not just selfishly withdraw, but beam from there, transforming people's lives as a beaming thing. That would be the best thing, the highest thing, not samadhi. That. Be a transformer. We have the capacity to do it within ourselves and also outside. We have the capacity to transform discord into harmony. We are a machine like that. And so, how will we get there? We'll get there by taking advantage of the flow of divine grace flowing toward us continuously. People go to tropical climates and so on and so forth to get the advantage of the flowing grace of the sun. They don't have to ask, will you please shine on me also? I see you're shining on all these people. Please shine on me also. No, I'm shining on everyone. You're not special. The eternal portion of myself shines on everyone. So that is the sun. So we are bathing in divine grace, but out of tune, generally speaking, with it. We take it for granted. We get up in the morning, we yawn, we anticipate a day. Then we get up, we rub our eyes, we do what we have to do. If you're fortunate, you'll be in the habit of, then after you're taking your bath or your shower, you then go and sit nicely in the morning and do some meditation, japa, prayer. And that should shore yourself up for the rest of the day. But during the rest of the day, what will you be doing? You'll be tuning your attention into the glory of the divine everywhere. That means there's no chore. That means there's no struggle. There's no anxiety. Because you've transformed all activities into activities of adoration, worship, and thankfulness. It's called karma yoga. And then, interspersed during the day, you might pause. A natural pause will be midday. And then, again, a little japa, a little meditation, a little worship. And then in the evening. If you can do this 5 times a day, your whole life would be transformed forever. It's taking the minimum that you do and intensifying it in a natural way, not in a struggle way, in a natural way, meaning the mind wishes to go there. And the more you get familiar with that, the more the mind wishes to go there. Now this happens in the East and West. The only thing is maybe a slight difference of approach. But the end, the terminus, will be exactly the same. And so, in some religious denominations, you'll find the emphasis perhaps on liturgy, some on reflection, contemplation, and meditation, some on acts of service and work. But it's no different, because every human will find a need to express what they already have, namely a mind that has all those capacities within it. And for this reason, all the yogas need to be practiced. We need to manifest our feeling, manifest our thinking, use our rationale. We have to employ our willing faculty, doing faculty, and we have to take opportunity of a unique faculty that we have, and that is to sit and steady the mind and bring our attention inwards. And it's only through this route that we get this real contact of discovery. And that nourishes us. Now, the only difference is in the language, because in Western culture it's called contemplation, varying terms like that. And the basis, of course, of all of the Jewish and Christian liturgical life is based on psalms. Poetic expressions of a relationship between a human individual entity and a divine, deepening into a divine that sits inside everything, deepening into a divine that operates through everything, and that which is beyond everything. And this cultivation of the mind is necessary regardless of East or West. It is true that in art, saints are pictured as lifting their eyes upward. And in the East, as Western art, in the East, is pictured as looking within. But ultimately, these are two approaches which draw us to the same conclusion of the unity of existence. And all the great mystics, all the great saints, all the great sages, most of them in Christianity, for example, dedicated to the path of bhakti, yoga, or devotion. And some, like Meister Eckhart, understanding a different route, a possible different route, having this idea of Godhead and God. There's a wonderful paleontologist called Teilhard de Chardin, a French paleontologist, who happened to be a priest. And he picked up, because he was working in China and Asia in general, and naturally picked up these ideas from there. The Columbans, where we do our retreats, perhaps if we're lucky, twice, maybe 3 times a year. And there's a museum. Those who've been on retreat will have had the fortune of going through this museum. And there you'll find such a breadth. So the Columbans, I always remember, you see, many of the missionaries in Roman Catholicism are well educated, but we are not so well educated. We come from the lower classes, because when we joined, we knew we'd be sent everywhere, Japan, South America, Pakistan, various places. And we joined for the adventure. We joined to get out of it. But soon, of course, the spirituality developed. How so? Because they had a genuine intention, first of all, to convert. And during this convert, they very quickly learned that other people, Buddhism in China, for example, or Taoism, or Confucianism, or Buddhism, all of these had much to learn, to teach them. Now, I attended a conference yesterday, very interesting. I mentioned before this broadcast how this inherent natural breadth of vision has to occur. That the division between East and West can disappear quite happily when we learn to listen to another, and as the Colombians did, learn to be taught and to incorporate some of the profound teachings that were available without surrendering their own beliefs, without surrendering their own theologies, nothing like that. Simply incorporating and deepening what they have. And so there's a formula that the people on the conference, Christians on the conference, were keen to adhere to 5 principles. That was telling, teaching, tending, transforming, and treasure. What it means is, you have a religion. Don't forget, it was the Buddhists who sent the first missionaries out in pairs. What was they had in mind? To convert people? In a sense, yes. But it wasn't to convert people from do away with one tradition and add ours. It was, please preserve what you have and put the profound teachings of Buddhism on the top. This is why you have so many varieties of Buddhism. This is the great missionary movement that spread Vedanta far and wide. And then, of course, Jesus said, go ye teach all nations, sending people out in pairs. And what was their idea of conversion? It was to teach people the message of the good news. What was the good news? About the Atman, what we call the kingdom of heaven within. That's the very foundation of Christianity, based solidly on Judaism, and Islam based on both traditions. So this has a cultural influence everywhere, no doubt. Even if you deny that you are an adherent of any religion, still your values permeate, there's no doubt. Now, if you take, for example, what can be learned on the one side, what can be learned on the other, and draw it down to one thing, we're all talking the same language. That will become imminently obvious to everybody. And so, interesting enough, they were talking about their places of worship that have now become real estate irrelevancies. Cathedrals, churches used to be full. Now they're empty. In our own society in Chicago, we purchased a church and made a universal temple there. Because all our shrines and temples are universal. Anybody can come. And if we have a figure, let's say of Ramakrishna there, it is only because he represents universality. He represents the harmony of religions. Well, you have to respect another person's point of view, and the only way to do that is through comparative religion in a real sense. That means, and I brought this up yesterday at this conference, and I said, you see, the only way that you can really understand and dialogue with somebody of another cultural background and religion being a very, very vital, essential part of the culture. Language is a part, habit is a part, art is a part, but fundamentally religion plays a major role in our culture. And so, to understand their point of view, it's not about understanding the ritualistic differences. It's about understanding the deep origins of it that produce all the values. And so, Christians, why don't you study the Bhagavad Gita? Hindus, why don't you study the Gospels and the Psalms? And why don't you study the Quran a little bit? You may not agree, but at least you'll understand. And dialogue is based on understanding. Dialogue is based on listening and observing. And listening means being empathetic, putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Whether you agree or not, it doesn't matter. But at least understanding the other person's point of view is a necessary thing. So Swami Vivekananda gives a beautiful lecture that was delivered at the Unitarian Church in Oakland, in California. He delivered it on February 28th, 1900. And he starts like this. And Vivekananda has a style of speaking that immediately catches your attention. He says, between all great religions of the world, there are many points of similarity. It's a wonderful statement. We don't go anywhere if we highlight the differences. We take the similarities and we find we have much in common. And as you know, we are members of the Dublin City Interfaith Forum, and there we're all friends and we look for the similarities. We don't look for the differences. We know the differences are there, but why highlight them? And so startling is this likeness at times as to suggest the idea that in many particulars, the different religions have copied from one another. But this act of imitation has been laid at the door of different religions, but this superficial charge, and that it is a superficial charge is evident from the following facts. And he says, religion is fundamental in the very soul of humanity. What does that mean? You see, there are many explanations today for why religions are there. Anthropologists will give their reasons, psychologists will give their reasons, and then neuroscientists will say that there are parts of the brain that can be stimulated and give you an ecstatic feeling. You can stimulate all the various, chemical things that feeling good brings about. But you see, what Vivekananda is saying is religion is fundamental. That's why you can never dispose of it. But what do we mean by religion? What Vivekananda means by religion is realization. Realization is religion. Otherwise, what use is it? Realization of what? Of your own true nature, of the God that is within. Face-to-face encounter with that divine entity that can be spoken to, listened to, and merged into. So, it is the very soul of humanity, and as all life is the evolution of that which is within it, of necessity, expresses itself through various peoples and nations. That's why we have religion. The language of the soul is one, the languages of nations are many. Their customs and methods of life are widely different. Religion is of the soul, and here he's using soul in the spiritual sense, not in the psychological sense. Is one, the language of nations are many, their customs and methods of life are widely different. Religion is of the soul and finds expression through various nations, languages, and customs. Hence it follows that the difference between the religions of the world is one of expression, not fundamental, and not of substance. And their points of similarity and unity are of the soul, are intrinsic, as the language of the soul is one, in whatever peoples and under whatever circumstance it manifests itself. The same sweet harmony is vibrant there also, as it is on many and diverse instruments. The first thing in common in all great religions of the world is the possession of an authentic book. And when religious systems have failed to have such a book, they have become extinct. Such was the fact of the religions of Egypt. The authentic book is the hearthstone, so to speak, of each great religious system, around which its adherents gather, and from which radiates the energy and life of the system. Then again he continues, each religion again lays the claim that its particular book is the only authentic word of God, that all other sacred books are false and are impositions upon poor human credulity, and that to follow another religion is to be ignorant and spiritually blind. But of course this is bigotry, and he says, such bigotry is characteristic of the orthodox element of all religions. For instance, the orthodox followers of the Vedas claim that the Vedas are the only authentic word of God in the world, and that God has spoken to the world only through the Vedas. Well, not only that, but that the world itself exists by virtue of the Vedas. Before the world was, the Vedas were. Everything in the world exists because it is in the Vedas. The cow exists because the name cow is in the Vedas. That is because the animal we know as cow is mentioned in the Vedas. The language of the Vedas is the original language of God. All other languages are mere dialects and not of God. And every word and syllable in the Vedas must be pronounced correctly. This is a school of thought called Mimamsa. And each sound must be given its true vibration, and every departure from this rigid exactness is terrible sin and unpardonable. He's starting off with his own Vedas. Thus, this kind of bigotry is predominant in the orthodox element of all religions. But this fighting over the letter is indulged in only by the ignorant, the spiritually blind. So he goes on like that. So there's the orthodox section that will be from religion, religio, the binding element. But the understanding, the rereading, that is the understanding of what really is the content of the book, is called religere. We have to read it again. More than that, we have to understand its inner meaning, not take the superficial thing. And so religion itself can be a restriction. Unless you understand, Swami Vivekananda's definition, that religion is realization. This conference yesterday was eye-opening for me because it suggested very, very clearly that this real estate, that is churches and so on, they said they are duty-bound. Regardless of this, go ye and teach all nations. We are duty-bound to offer it to our neighbors of different religious traditions. Muslims, if they require a mosque. Hindus, if they require a temple. Jews, if they require a synagogue. Or other Christian denominations that require a space. And so this was a wonderful thing. And so we're all obliged to tell people about our religion, but not in a missionary, converting way, but at least to inform people, because not to inform people is to open the door to misunderstanding. And misunderstanding is not the basis for dialogue. It's the basis for accusation. And then it's a question of teaching. What? Teaching, not teaching about the orthodoxy of your religion, but teaching what your fundamental message is and seeing the likeness, the similarities. And then tending, we have to look after each other because the basis of all religions and religious systems is love. But love is not present if there's no loving nature. Lovingness has to be there. And that is overlooking any details that we may have a bias about. Then another T would be transform. We have the capacity to transform our own lives, and in doing that, automatically transform lives of others and transform other things, transform society, we transform the youth and all the rest of it, all the components in our drama. And the best way of transforming is be the transformation yourself. And then treasure. Treasure what? Treasure all the equipment and resources that you have, including body, mind, and the whole globe and the environment. Now, these 5 factors they put out, and they said, the first 2 belong to Christianity, the rest belong to all religions. And I said, no, even the first 2 belongs to all religions, actually. And then you see, to make a space, and also it's the responsibility of cathedrals to do it, because cathedrals are places specifically dedicated to education. You go throughout the whole of Ireland, you see the Celtic crosses, and there will be biblical swords carved on them. You go to huge cathedrals. I went to Chartres Cathedral, and every window is decorated with biblical scenes teaching the common man. They can't read. And even today, with multimedia present, we have an opportunity to teach people in a multi-sensory way. The highest impact is multisensory. And so these gorgeous cathedrals taught in a multisensory way, with gorgeous stained glass windows, with statues, with pictures, and so on. All of these things. And so understanding other people's point of view, empathy, is something to do with a kind of new era where we cannot help but understand East and West and merge the two in one glorious spiritual community that is inevitably growing. Because despite the fact that where you have a secular state and a secular society, behind it is also a new urge for spirituality, for accessing the soul, accessing the pure spirit. Because it's an inner drive. You can't avoid it. And when you try to avoid it, it becomes a delaying thing. We can go to it directly. Anyway, we can leave things open for further discussion, let's say 5 minutes or something, and questions if you like.
But when you were saying that all the religions more or less point to the same thing, or that's kind of the gist of what Vivekananda was saying, that why, and this is not a judgmental question, it's a sincere one, why do so few get it?
Why do so few people get it? Because it's to do with ownership, and and ownership leads to orthodoxy. So we always have to remember Swami Vivekananda's definition, fundamental definition. What is the goal of life? Each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest. But then going on to say churches, temples, books, doctrines, dogmas, rituals are secondary details. When we see them as primary details, we're in for trouble. What is the basis of it? Egoism. My culture, my religion, my language. And an exclusivism that obscures any real loving attitude. Putting a border around yourself, my job, my family, me first. Spirit of generosity says, you please eat the meal, I'll take the crumbs. The other way around is, you take the crumbs, I'll take the meal. So we have to have a shift in attitude, and the bulk of humanity is living in the world that they register as their reality. But behind it is a movement toward perfection, a movement toward happiness. So actually there's a spiritual urge toward it. And when they realize the sameness, then it becomes a shifting moment in their life. For example, even just on a human level, if we now start deregistering ourselves as, let's say, Irish, Indian. Let's take, for example, India and Pakistan, mortal enemies. You can see it at the border. They're hostile to each other and so on. It's the same people. But you see, a division has been caused, and a flag has been raised, and our identity has been entrenched. But you see, where's the identity? Where's the gender of the Atman? Where's the duality in the Atman? Where's the nationality in the Atman? It's not there.
So you take India, for example, my mother country, I almost say.
Yeah.
I mean, the very soil of India, has had people like this walking around, for centuries.
Mm.
Yet they hate the people in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Genuinely.
Mm. Mm. And vice versa. Yeah.
So what, from you, and I know you have a vast experience of, what's been missed? There has to be something to be missed.
Yeah. The unity is missed. Mm-hmm. And it's very good. It's all very well to give lip service to your religion and the principles of religion and so on and so forth, but it's hollow without a practice. And when I say practice, I mean a genuine feeling of the unity of existence. It's all in the unity of existence. Religion leads us to the unity of existence if it's taken properly. If it's not, if it's to do with rituals and dogmas and doctrines and so on, and differences, then the differences become entrenched and we can see a slide down, a degradation of human interactions. Why should we go to war? You know, the Ukrainians and the Russians are essentially, ethnically, the same people. Why should they fight? Because somebody says this is my land and somebody says this is my land, and they make a political statement about it. And they're immune, seemingly, to innocent, thousands and thousands of innocent people dying, civilians dying, women, children, old people. An immunity like that. Can you imagine the horror of the Holocaust and the absolute insensitivity of those who were quite prepared to consider fellow humanity as vermin? Complete insensitivity about it at all. Hardness is difficult to understand and describe, and yet it's there. Man's inhumanity to man is there.
Is that not, and forgive me for saying it simply, is that not what this is? Is that not where we're sitting? Is that not what his teaching was? He practiced all religions, realized the Buddha, realized Christ, realized them all, and declared they were all the same. So
how dare he?
No, there must be something missing when it's, and you know me and on the Peter and James stuff, I'm not into the heavy philosophy, but Peter's is simple, and it doesn't get any more simple than those teachings. So
it's because we all do it in our minor way also, you see. You have a house?
Just about.
Does it belong to you?
No, I don't think so. Between the bank and God, I think it's pretty good.
Because you've registered in God's name, you see. Yeah. Now, how many people throughout Dublin would have done that?
But that's the essence of the centre. The essence of the centre is to spread the ideal of Vedanta, which is harmony of religions, and the ideals behind them and the reality. Yeah. So in simplicity, and it's not, I'm not being argumentative, I'm just saying, what are people missing? Because it's very simple, those teachings, unless I'm just too stupid to see.
No, it's very simple. Many people, but most people don't. That's why we're here, to spread that simplicity, to spread that sense of unity. Yeah. Now, if everybody got it, there'd be no necessity for us to be missionaries in this. So most people automatically take their separateness and their individuality for granted. And as long as that is there, we can classify that as ignorance. Here described as an eternal portion of myself. We didn't register that. We registered each individuality defending their own territory. And you see, I always draw that circle, see, with myself, the individuality on this side, struggling against other things, people and places and events, going like that, defending their territory, and always suffering as a result, but having the opportunity to stand outside if they wish. And part of it is, well, can I be persuaded that this path is more interesting, that it is more exhilarating? You see, for example, there's been a decline in the whole of Europe, and to some extent in America, of, let us say broadly, religion as such. But then in parallel with that and commensurate with that is an increase in the use of entertainment. And as long as the attention is diverted in that way, then interest in the other side will fade away. If God is big, the world becomes small. When the world is big, the God is small and insignificant and uninteresting. And that's the same for all ages, it's the same. And the more people engage in that valuation of the world that involves ownership, I own this, I own that, then you'll have a defense that goes with it, an aggression that goes with it, and you'll have people steeped in that understanding until nature herself gives a little prod called pain. And that pain, mainly in the form of bereavement, is the most acute side of it. That then gives the people the opportunity to wake up and revalue their situation and go in a different way. En masse, it happens. See, after the First World War, what they call the Great War in the last century, more people started going back to church than anywhere else. They started leaving it. So when people are in a corner and pinched, they start revaluing things and making attempts to change their lives until a separate thing comes, another thing comes to divert their attention. So people are not generally interested in that. We can all test it out. Somebody offers you 30 million euros or immortality. Which will you take? Most people will go for the 30 million. Now, Nachiketa was also challenged in the Katha Upanishad, you see. And Yama offers him more than 30 million, offers him untold wealth. Nachiketa was full of faith. What's absent in people is faith. And he says, well, that's not going to give me immortality. It's worthless. Even all these great treasures, they'll come and they'll go. I want to find out the real thing, please. Give me the real treasure. So it's part of the delusion. You ask then, from our philosophy, why? It's because nature is comprised of three evolutionary forces that act to bind our understanding and hold us tight. And this is called Maya. So we're under the spell of Maya, which has a characteristic of projecting something, hiding something. But also, if we handle it carefully, revealing something also. These are the three things. Then how do you reveal? You reveal by being completely, totally truthful, sincere, and selfless. Therein lies the key. As long as there's one small ounce of selfishness, you won't get it. If I gave a lecture every Tuesday on how to create immeasurable wealth, we would fill this hall to bursting. But we're not saying that. We're saying your true nature is immortal and infinite. And this is how you can access it. And the rest is up to you. And so we get 3, 4, online maybe 9 people. That's it. But these are 9 treasures. You see, because if they come week after week, it means they are earnest. And it means their endeavor to do what they can. And that develops into a thirst. And only when you get that thirst and yearning will there be this commensurate opening. The matching opening is there according to the level of yearning, the level of desire to see God. You want to put it that way. And if that desire is not there, it's because there's a desire for many other things. You see, Buddha, that's why Buddha Siddhartha, Gautama Siddhartha, became the Buddha because he got a psychological jolt. He went out and he saw, oh, what is this? Oh, that is an old man. Old man? Is he the only example? No, no, no. Everyone who's born, if they survive, they become old. What's wrong with this person? Oh, he's suffering. He's physically subject to disease. Oh, really? How many more are like this? Very naive. Yeah, no, everybody who has a body is likely to suffer physically sooner or later. Oh, now a beautiful perfectionist picture, an idealistic picture, see, a Shangri-La picture is now being eroded. And then the next thing, of course, is a corpse being carried. What's wrong with that man? Oh, he's dead. Dead? What does that mean? Well, you see, you're living. He's not living. And he's not coming back either. Okay. Is he the only one? No, everyone who's born will die. Then what is this person? Oh, he's a wandering monk. He doesn't want death. He wants the secret to immortality. He doesn't hold this body of only fleeting significance. Like that. Oh, will he be successful? I don't know. I'm living here. Will he be successful? Well, he thinks he will. That's why he's wandering around, dedicating his life to taking his attention and drawing it toward the truth, investigating. And that yearning and investigation will yield the truth for him. Oh, now he goes back to the palace and he's completely distracted, in a mood. And normally, attractive ladies coming and dancing would be a great enough to distract him. But he's in a distracted mood, and they dance and they get tired, and they all start sleeping. And he looks at what were previously considered beautiful bodies, and he sees them snoring and saliva coming from their mouth and clothes disheveled. And he revalues the whole thing, comes to a conclusion. All of this is fleeting. I have to do something about it. Is there something permanent? I have to investigate. I have to do what this man was doing, this monk. So let me renounce. He says goodbye to his sleeping wife and child, and off he goes. Doesn't wake them. Then, like any enthusiast, he thinks that I have to make up for lost time. Let me now do all the things that ascetics do. Let me fast. Let me stand on one leg, perhaps, in a yoga posture. Let me gaze into the sun. These are some things that people do. Let me torture the body, because get rid of the body. Oh, that's not working. Still no enlightenment. In fact, it's even worse. So let me sit down. No map, no compass. And in sitting down, let me now investigate for myself. Inevitably, the mind is turbulent. It comes in the form of Mara, the tempter, like Jesus in the desert. You see these similarities. Jesus in the desert, tempted by the devil. Attempting there to fast, meditate 40 days, 40 nights, the Jewish tradition. And, oh, you're hungry. Here's some bread, some food. Or, power. You meditate so well, you can have power. You can possess any kingdom you like here. You can exert immeasurable power. And his answer, do not tempt the Lord your God. That kind of thing. In Buddha's case, it's Mara. Mara comes, tempting him with this and that and the other. And Buddha's resolve remains solid. Then he starts his investigation of the world, his discerning mind. And then one by one, he takes off every layer of the jiva until he discovers the Atman. Now, he doesn't call it that, but there's no doubt in taking everything off and eliminating things, he's left with something extremely positive, an enlightened intellect. From here on, he's called one of enlightened intellect, called Buddha. And in his humility, he maintains, oh, I had to be born, I don't know, hundreds of times, maybe thousands, to get to this state. So we have to be born maybe thousands of times if we don't get it. But there's an inner fundamental perfection which is pushing us from within and pulling us from without God's grace, urging us from within, our inner divinity wanting to express itself, our inner blissful state wanting to come up, giving us all the resources called the human life. You can only do it through the human life. So, okay, good. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.